Backstage again at the Iowa City Jazz Festival for 2015, getting ready for the appearance of James Dreier and Ritmocano. Going to be a fun time this afternoon. Little Afro-Cuban salsa thing.
Yep.
Great to have you here, James.
Thank you very much. We're
Looking
so
forward
honored
to
to
it.
be here. Great privilege for us.
First of all, before we get too far into this, tell me a little bit about yourself for people who don't know the James Dreier story. We know you've been around here a long time at the university, but
how much time do you have?
5 or 10 minutes. The capsule.
Well, let's see. As it relates to Latin music, maybe to shorten it up a little bit, I was always interested in Latin music ever since I heard some Santana music coming out of my parents' stereo system when I bought the first Santana album back in 1968 or so.
Sure.
And I've been fascinated by Latin music ever since. I got a chance to begin studying it when I was at Berkeley. They just had hired an Afro-Cuban drummer at that time, so I got to study with him. And that piqued my interest. When I got back to Iowa many years later, Bob Washut was just starting up the Orquesta Alta Maiz. So I got to be in that, and that was really the biggest benefit of my musical career as far as Latin jazz and salsa go, because that was the workshop for the next 26 years for me to work in that band. And we eventually moved on to Iowa City. I went to school here at the University of Iowa, got my master's degree, and wormed my way into the University of Iowa, the jazz area, and have been in there ever since. I teach the Latin Jazz Ensemble, the Afro-Cuban Drum and Dance Ensemble, until they just cut that last year, but until then I did that. And I teach several other classes, improv and some other stuff too, so keeps me busy.
Who did you listen to along the way that really piqued your interest and kind of drew your attention to this music as far as, well, percussionists go, but for anybody, I would imagine, besides Santana, of course, who was the original?
Early on, I started getting into Airto with Chick Corea.
Oh, okay.
And that was actually my doorway into jazz in general. I had a hard time understanding jazz early on. And when that Return to Forever thing, little electric piano and the Airto with his Brazilian percussion, that was really appealing to me. So I started following that and got very interested in all that stuff and got all of Airto's albums and started listening to, you guys were playing O'Farrell.
Chico?
No, sax player. You're just playing a bunch of his, what's his name? I'm blanking, but anyway. He played a lot with Chick Corea back then.
Oh, Joe Farrell.
Joe Farrell.
Yeah.
Thank you. And you've been playing that album of his from like 1970.
Right.
That is that really brought back
with John
memories.
McLaughlin. And,
DeJohnette,
right.
I think is on there,
yeah.
and
Ron Carter, I think.
Yeah, and that's not so Latin-y, but it's got that kind of fusion-y vibe and that sort of very, at that time, progressive kind of feel to it. And so anyway, that was my inroads into jazz, and then I started getting into Tito Puente and some of the salsa stuff in the 70s and 80s, and then Latin jazz, Paquito de Rivera, and all the Cuban guys, the Brazilian cats that, I've had a lot of TAs that were Brazilian that have come up to study at the University of Iowa, and they've brought with them the contemporary music and music that's happening now. Wayne Wallace was here. I really got into his stuff with Michael Spiro. So it's many, many artists that span the whole genre of Latin jazz.
So you've made your way to Cuba a few times. What do you think about the opening of?
Oh, it's fantastic. I think it's so far has been, everybody's sort of holding their breath. They've been worried about when Cuba would start to open up, and so far it's been sort of controlled and slow-paced, which I think is good. But I think it's fantastic. It's something that we've been waiting for a long time. Should have happened many, many years ago, in my opinion. But yeah, it's a good thing. It's a very good thing. It's just people are afraid that the commercial interests, if there was not a strong Cuban government to sort of control things a little bit, that American and European commercial interests would just overwhelm everything and just sort of ruin everything that's cool about Cuba. So we're hoping that doesn't happen. But it will change for sure, and it needs to change. It's been somewhat in a isolated situation for many years. But we're hoping the music continues and the music, continues to get out there, and just all Cuban musicians are just amazing and it's
Because
incredible.
there's always been that kind of between musicians anyway, the artistic thing that you were able to go down to Cuba and work with those
Yeah,
guys and kind of
I
come
was
back and
always able to
forth.
go
And
even during the worst of the times because I could go do research there. And that was
sure,
always the one sort of exception. You have to prove that your livelihood is directly related to that kind of study, and obviously mine was. So I've been there 3 times, and this year I'm not going to Cuba, but I'm going to California to do a Afro-Cuban workshop where there are going to be a bunch of Cubans there teaching. So I'm looking forward to that. Get another round of exposure to some really high-level uh, Latin artists. So
so do you personally have a preference between? Well, I'm not even sure what quite the difference is between Afro-Cuban and say Brazilian or bossa nova.
um,
Do you have a favorite style that
I
you
guess
work in?
if I had to, geez, that's hard. I love both spheres of that influence.
And
I'm
is there a different type
probably.
of playing with
Oh,
each type of that
definitely,
music?
definitely.
Yeah.
There's definitely a difference in that, and I'm probably a little bit more inclined to the Afro-Cuban side of things, just because I've been there more often. I've been to Brazil twice, and I've studied a lot with Brazilians,
Hmm.
um, and I love that music. So it's kind of hard to choose one or the other, but I guess I'm a little bit more comfortable maybe playing the Afro-Cuban stuff if I
Well,
had to
you've
choose
got a
one.
great Afro-Cuban band at the University of Iowa that we get
Yeah.
to hear every year, and it's
Latin
just
jazz ensemble. Well, and they do some
the
Brazilian
Latin
stuff
jazz
too.
ensemble.
Yeah,
Sure,
yeah, we do a little
it's
bit of
just a great
everything in that
great
group, and
program
I
you've
think
got.
that's one thing I like about Ritmocano as well, is that we do Brazilian, we do Cuban, Caribbean, so we do a mix of things. So it's fun.
Speaking of Ritmocano,
Yeah.
now this is the first band you've led. Has is it
Yes.
is it it's
Yep.
what took you so long?
Well, I'm a late bloomer, I guess. I was in Alto Maiz for so long, and I was one of the people that was really involved with that band and did a lot of the, planning. And if there was a project going on, I was always in there with that.
Hmm.
So it wasn't my band, but I was definitely a someone that was pretty involved in that. And then when my involvement changed, I still play in that group. That Ed leads it now, and it's changed the personnel. There's still some of the old guard in there, but it's a new thing now, and I still get to play with them, which is awesome. A great experience for me. But I'm sort of a sideman there now, so that gave me the opportunity finally to say, okay, this is time for me to do my own thing, and I wanted to do an album, and I got some money to do that, so that sort of spurred it on, and we did the Familia album, and we've just been going. I got some amazing musicians, local musicians, to play with me, and which just goes to prove it's like, if you build it, they will come. So if you get a gig, you can get some pretty good people to play with you. So
Sure.
that's they some really great musicians, Steve Shanley and Danny O'Lean. Greg Mizunik was our first bass player, a really great bass player, but he moved to Des Moines, and I was worried about who I could find, and
Mm.
Danny kind of came back into playing, so that saved us. And then Rich Med, my colleague from Orchestra Alta Maiz, and then usually Damani Phillips. Today, John Carlson, a great saxophone player,
Oh,
that's done a
sure.
lot of work in Chicago, and local guy here is playing with us, so that's a really great thing for us. And then Ed East, of course, my colleague from Alta Maiz, and Paul Cunliffe as well. So it's really kind of a small version of Alto Maiz with a few extra people, really playing more Latin jazz, less salsa. Not really any salsa per se, mostly Latin jazz.
And I saw Gabe Med over there
Yep.
too, so he's back. He was part of that original
He
on the
was
CD.
he
there.
was on our CD, and he lives in New York, of course. So he can't play with our group. So I decided to make the group saxophone and trombone. But then when I got this gig and I knew that Gabe might be coming around, I thought, well, let's have him come in and we'll play some of those tunes off the album that we don't often get to play. And then I also used that opportunity to invite my son, Derek, who's a percussionist in Chicago,
Oh.
to also join us. He was on the album as well. So we have a couple of the new next generation going to be on stage with us, part of the set
The
today.
expanded version of Ritmocano.
Oh yeah, it's going to be really, really fun. We're going to bring Gabe and Derek up about halfway through, and it's going to be great.
What are we going to hear? And I know you've got some originals
Uh-huh.
or two on that disc, but what else can we hear this afternoon?
Couple of things from one thing from Victor Mendoza. We're going to hear a Bob Washut tune, a Basso Ernesto. We're going to hear a tune by Grace Leon, one of our TAs, a piano player that had just graduated. She played this awesome little samba in her recital, and I went right up to her and said, I need that to have that because I want to play that. That's a really cool tune. So we got some original music from other people. I've got a couple of original tunes in there, and it's a pretty diverse set.
So did she arrange that, or did you do the
She
arrangement?
just gave me the lead sheet. There's not a lot of arranging on that because we're doing it pretty much as a small group. So we're going to do that one just as a quartet. No percussion, no extra percussion. So it's just going to be drums, bass, piano, and saxophone.
Now, do you do most of the arranging, or do the songs work themselves
I did all
out,
the
or?
arranging for the album, and all those tunes are arranged. Song for My Father is the one that's probably most arranged. That's got the danzón for My Father segment in there as well. That's a Oscar Hernandez tune, and so that's definitely an arranged tune by me. La Tercera, the Ray Vega tune. I messed with that quite a bit as well, and kind of made that into a thing with the monk tune. So yeah, there's kind of got dusted off my Berkeley arranging chops, which have been laying dormant for quite some time, and especially when I did the album, that was one of the fun things about that. Actually, kind of doing that kind of work I hadn't done in a while. So
do you have plans to do more recording with the band, or?
We don't have anything on in the near future. I definitely would like to do something, out there for our next project at some point. Right now, we're just trying to keep busy and get gigs and have opportunities to play. So that's kind of where we're focused at right now.
How about the U of I Latin Jazz Ensemble?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a lot of kids coming back, or are you starting fresh? It's kind of tough.
No,
to do
I've got like the situation where you have like the Big Ten championship team and they all graduate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They all graduated?
They all graduated
Oh, no.
pretty much, except for my drummer, and a couple people are going to be in there. But I got a new crop of students coming in. I got the same trombone player. He's a really nice young trombone player. He was a freshman, so he's coming back. But Jeff Miguel and a couple of my two trumpet players both graduated. I lost my piano player, so that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
But the nice thing is that we did a CD at the end of the semester of that band. So that's being mixed this summer. We're going to try to put it out in the fall. So they went in John Speck's studio and recorded 8 tunes before we all parted ways. And we had a singer. I don't know if you remember, if you saw the band that last semester. We had a singer.
Yes.
From Colombia. And he not only sang salsa, he also sang Portuguese.
Mm.
So we have quite a bit of salsa on this album, and some beautiful bossa nova as well, with him on vocals. So it's a really nice. It was a nice opportunity to include vocals into that band this year. And he left as well. He was a graduate student in the writers' workshop.
Oh, wow! Interesting.
So yeah, we thought we'd better take advantage. So we had earned some money from some performances, and we spent it.
So do you actively go out and recruit kids for the ensemble, or do you
yes,
just pick from
kind
people
of.
that are
John,
coming in?
I consult with John Rapson, our area head. Usually we start talking about this about halfway through the spring semester, thinking about the next fall. And we sort of determine who we'd like to have in which group, and then we kind of talk to kids and get them interested. And then some people just, walk-ons, I guess you'd call them, might just come off and are freshmen, and they come in and want to audition for the group. So, but it's evolved into a pretty high-level band that's kind of considered one of the top groups now. So it's very gratifying.
I would say it's an excellent band. Every year you seem to, no matter who you've got, you come through with a fine ensemble.
That's a testament to the students. Really, they are amazing and always come through. We always have, of course, they're students, so if they're young, and especially, they have to learn the ropes and figure things out sometimes. But 99 times out of 10, they end up doing the things that need to be done to make sure that the ensemble works. So it's really cool to see. To see that growth is really gratifying as
I
well.
bet. I bet. Well, we look forward to hearing the new
Yeah,
CD and
make sure that you guys get a
the
copy.
new ensemble next year,
Yep.
and more immediately,
Yep.
Ritmocano coming up here in just a few minutes. James, thanks for taking some time out and bringing some of this great Afro, Latin, Cuban, Brazilian
Yep.
stuff to Eastern Iowa, because it's sure it's nice to hear. Let
It
me tell
is.
you what, it's great
It's a
to hear
blast to play it
and to dance to too,
as
if you
well.
can dance to that sort of thing.
Yep.
I don't have
And
the fancy feet like some people do, but
well, it has definitely got that sense of rhythm to it, and we love it. And thank you to KCCK for your great support of this Jazz Fest and for your support for me through the years. And I would also like to ask the people that are listening to this amazing jazz festival on the internet or on the radio to pony up a little bit and put a little money in the pot for these guys, because KCCK does amazing work. So please support this really, really, really great station and support their work at the Jazz Festival. So that's my little plug
thanks, James.
from the heart.
Have a good show.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.